Okay, so we've been doing the HIIT workout. It stands for High Intensity Interval Training. So that's just a good way to build up your strength and your cardiovascular endurance. When they talk about fitness and PE though, they talk about the FITT principle, F-I-T-T. So F stands for frequency. So how often are you physically active? So in like a regular week, if you were physically active every day, that would be 7 days. So most people aren't into moderate, vigorous physical activity 7 days. Usually it's like 5 or 6. So that's the frequency. So how many times during the week do you do it? So do you only do it the 3 days that you have PE, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Or do you do stuff on the weekends? Or do you do stuff at night with your family? Intensity. So how much energy are you using during your physical activity? So are you just taking a stroll? Are you walking super fast? Do you hike? Do you run? Do you play soccer? Are you involved in a sport that requires your heart to beat really hard? When you're doing your HIIT workout, are you just having at level 1? And level 1 is super easy for you, and that's all you're doing. You're not challenging yourself. Are you at level 1 and it's super hard for you and you're breathing hard and you're sweating? That's the intensity. That's how hard you're working. And then the time. How long are you active? So the goal for students, kids, is 60 minutes a day. Now I'm not saying that we're doing PE 60 minutes a day, not where you're like practicing stuff that I'm teaching you. You are doing like physical activity. So maybe you have basketball practice later, or maybe you go to taekwondo, or maybe you play hockey, or maybe you have dance. So the goal is 60 minutes a day. That's the time. And then the type. So you have to mix it up. So I don't know if you remember last week, I was doing some push-ups with you or something, and I was like, oh boy, I am not in PE shape. And so what I meant by that was, so I do a lot of cardiovascular stuff. I like to walk, I like to hike. So that's really good for my heart and my leg muscles. But strength, like I don't do a lot of stuff with my arms. I don't do a lot of push-ups. I don't do a lot of weightlifting, and I certainly don't practice stretching very often, so I'm not very flexible. Like that's not part of my normal routine. So when I came back last week and I was doing, teaching PE with you and doing push-ups, I hadn't used those muscles in a long time, and it was really, really hard for me. And so the more you use your muscles, the stronger they're going to get. So you have frequency, so the FITT principle. Frequency, how often, intensity, how hard, time, how long, and then type. So are you just doing stuff to work your heart, or are you doing stuff to work your muscles, and then are you stretching so you don't get hurt? So that is the FITT principle. So it says on my piece of paper that I need to lead by example. Well, I can assure you that I did not lead by example this summer because I only worked on my cardiovascular fitness. So I'm going to make a goal to continue to do the HIIT workouts and to work on my strength, and especially work on my flexibility, because I am not very flexible. So when I talk about flexibility, I talk about being able to bend over and touch your toes. I can only go down halfway down my shins. I am not very flexible. So you need to make sure that you are exercising often. Try to get in 60 minutes a day. It needs to be somewhat intense, so you're breathing hard and you're sweating. And then it needs to vary between cardiovascular, strength, and flexibility. So that's why we always start with a warm-up. We get our heart going a little bit. And then sometimes we do strength stuff where we just use our body weight. I'm not talking about lifting weights. And then at the end we stretch, so that hits the flexibility component. let's talk a little bit more in depth about frequency and intensity. So, frequency, how often are you being physically active? So most people don't have time to put 60 minutes together or the endurance to play for 60 minutes super hard. Some of you do, some of you don't. So you might need to break it up. You might need to do 15 minutes, a half hour later on. You might want to do 15 minutes of cardiovascular, then maybe 20 minutes of strength training, and then maybe 25 minutes of flexibility, stretching. So you might want to break it up. So you're not doing, so maybe you're doing a little bit each day. You could also do it where you are doing cardiovascular one day, muscular strength one day, but then you should do stretching on both days. It's really important to stretch. So that's the frequency. So if you make it a habit, that means trying to do something every day, it will be easier. So every day, without fail, I set my alarm for 5 o'clock and I get up and I go for a really long walk, no matter what. Then, and it's easier because it's super hot during the day. And then I am doing the HIIT workout with you. So I am working on muscular strength and endurance with you. And then of course, I'm also doing some stretching with you. And I do it with you, and I do it with TK, and I do it with K, K through 2 also. So I'm actually doing it more than just with you. All right, so now let's talk about intensity. So remember when I talked to you just a little bit ago that intensity is really important and that your heart's going to beat fast and you are going to be sweating a little bit and it might be a little bit hard to breathe. Now sometimes we just feel like, oh, this is so hard, I don't want to do it. And that is mental. So we're going to talk about your heart rate and a way to check your heart rate to make sure that you are really exerting yourself the way that you should be, so that you're using the right amount of intensity. So there are different levels of intensity that you're trying to reach. And so we'll have to talk about how to find your heartbeat, and then what to do once you find your heartbeat, and how you know if you are in the right zone for your heartbeat. And so I will do that right after this on my iPad, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
So this is a way to check your intensity. The intensity of your workout is by looking at your heart rate. So when we look at our heart rate, like sometimes we might think that we're working really hard and we're not working hard. So this is just a really good way to check for sure. So we can check our heart rate. So there's a few different ways to calculate your maximum heart rate. So your maximum heart rate is as hard as you want your heart to work. So you take 220 minus your age. So let's just assume that most of you are about 10 years old. So if we look at 220 minus 10, we get 210. So that's the highest that we would ever want your heart rate to be. No higher than 210. If it is higher than 210, you probably want to retake it just to make sure that you didn't make a mistake. So there are 2 fitness zone areas that we are going to look at. We're going to look at the healthy heart zone and the fitness zone. So if your heart rate, maximum heart rate, is supposed to be 210, we're going to look at the healthy heart rate zone. 50% of 210 and 60% of 210. So 50% of 210 is just half. So it's 105 beats per minute. So that's the lowest that you want your heart rate to be, is 105 beats per minute if you are working out. Then you're in the healthy heart zone. So you're kind of maintaining your health. So your heart's getting a decent workout, it's just not great. It's not making it super strong. So if we look at that, the top end of that range, that is 60% of 210. It's 126 beats per minute. So between 105 and 126 beats per minute is your healthy heart zone. So you know that you are working at a fairly decent level if you're in between there. So your intensity is pretty good. It's not great. So we already know that for the fitness zone, that 60% is 126. And the top range of the fitness zone is 70% of 210. So that's 147 beats per minute. So if you're in that zone, you're probably breathing pretty hard, you're working up a sweat, your heart is pounding. So to check your intensity, you want to be somewhere between 105 and 147. When you're looking at this, you also need to consider that sometimes you just don't feel great. And so 105 feels like you're working really, really hard. And so sometimes you just have to think about how you're actually feeling as well. So don't just rely on your heart rate. I want you to think about how you're feeling. So the goal is to have your heart rate up. So you know that your intensity is up. So you're getting a very good workout. Now we're going to talk about how to take your heart rate. So there's two places that you can check for your heartbeat. You're going to use your index finger and your middle finger, and you're going to put it on your wrist. You're not going to use your thumb, and you are going to feel for your heart rate, for your heartbeat. The other place that you can check is right below your jawline, kind of close to the front of your neck. You should be able to feel your heartbeat there as well. So try and find it. You can't talk or you won't be able to find it. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to set a timer, and you are going to count the beats for 10 seconds. So you can't count 10 seconds and count your heart rate. So you need to count your heart rate, and I will time you for 10 seconds. Ready? Set. Go. Stop. All right. So you are going to multiply the number by 6. So if you had 10 beats in 10 seconds, so 10 beats, you counted 10 beats while I was counting 10 seconds, 10 times 6 is 60. There we go. 10 times 6 is 60. So that's 60 beats per minute. So that's pretty low, especially for a child. And you would probably not be that low if you were exercising. So that means that you're not in your fitness zone. So I do this math and I make a mistake because I do 20 times 10 and it's supposed to be 20 times 6. So if you counted 20 beats when I was timing the 10 seconds, you would do 20 times 6, and that would be 126. So you are within that range that lets you know that your intensity is starting to get up there. So you're in the fitness zone if you have 126. So your goal is to be somewhere between 105 and 147 beats per minute. So you're going to have to get a timer, you're going to have to look at a clock, you're going to have to look at a stopwatch, and you're going to have to time your heart rate for 10 seconds and then multiply by 6. You could also count it for an entire 60 seconds. That's actually a really long time, especially if your heart rate is beating really, really fast. So, like I said earlier, you want to try and be between 105 beats per minute and 147 beats per minute. You could also have a Fitbit. You could also have an Apple Watch. You could also have, there's some kinds of devices that can take your heart rate. But really, just looking at a clock and counting your beats for 10 seconds and then multiplying that by 6 will give you your heart rate. So you're going to need to practice taking your heart rate. So you're going to try and find, you'll get good at it. Try and find your heartbeat on your neck. You can try and find your heartbeat on your wrist. And you take the number for 10 seconds and you multiply it by 6, and that will give you the beats per minute. So like I said earlier, it will give you the true intensity of your workout. So you don't want to be above 147 because that means that you're really starting to get towards your maximum heart rate. You also don't want to be below 105 because that means that you're not working really hard. And like I said, sometimes it's just about how you feel. So sometimes you might feel like you're working really hard, and it might be because you don't have water or you're really tired. So you need to think about how you feel as well.